Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Better believe Steve with you once again. Today, I'm here to update you on our progress with exit strategy. As you remember, 25 or so days ago, we had a meeting with the Department of Employment Services Director, Lisa Mallory, and the Department of Human Services Director, David Burns, on how we could get together and employ the least vulnerable homeless individuals in the District of Columbia. And I want to give you an update on how we're doing so far. To help me with that dialogue, I'm going to call in my buddy Eric Sheptock. Eric, how you doing today?
All right, yourself?
All right, it was just about 25 days ago or so that we were right across the street and we had our meeting with Miss Lisa Mallory.
Yeah, but you know, before I even talk about that meeting though, I want to point out where we are. You know, to our left we have the U.S. Department of Labor. To our right we have one of the biggest shelters in the country. This shelter holds as many as 1,350 homeless people, and these buildings are so close you could literally build a catwalk from this building to that building, and yet the folk from DOL have never crossed the road to talk to those homeless people and see what they can do to possibly get them into some jobs.
Eric, do you remember a couple of years ago, the STREATS team, we met with the Assistant Secretary of Labor, Jane Oates?
I do.
And I think we talked about the exit strategy, and we had done our due diligence in coming up with the exit strategy. And there was some document that we researched. It was the JT.
I know what you're talking about. It's called the Job Training Homeless Demonstration Project.
Right.
And that document was put forth in 1992. It was a funding document that created funding for workforce development among the homeless community all over the country. And I mean, and that document is 20 years old. There were some very clear successes, and so I mean, this is not rocket scientists. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already been done before 20 years ago. So I think that, you know, we need to rehash that effort, and we need to use that document to employ the homeless people today.
And what I like, and what I'd like for is our audience to look into this document. It's a lengthy document, but it gives you a lot of answers and tells you a lot about the services that were provided for the homeless some 20 years ago. So I ask you all to Google
Job Training Homeless Demonstration Project.
Almost a month ago, we had a meeting downtown here at the John L. Young Women's Shelter with the director of the Department of Employment Services, Lisa Mallory. In that meeting, we discussed various ways of getting the homeless employed. As I sit here and I talk here with Eric, that was a promising meeting. Tell our audience what came out of that meeting with the director.
Well, during the meeting with Director Lisa Mallory, we discussed the possibility of STREATS going out and finding between 10 and 15 highly employable homeless people, those who have the least barriers to employment, who are the least vulnerable, and we would direct them to DOES, and DOES would make a special effort to connect them to employers. DOES couldn't promise them a job, but they could promise to get them as far as the interview.
Well, how were we going to identify, let our audience know how we were identifying these 10 to 15 people?
Well, we at STREATS have a vetting process that we were using, and we communicated that vetting process to David Burns, the director of the Department of Human Services, and he sent an email out to various service providers, to shelters and soup kitchens and whatnot, for them to find the people who are the most employable.
So what we were actually asking for them to contact their case managers, because the case managers should be more in touch with the population that each of these places serve. Hey Eric, why don't I let you explain to our audience the experiences that we had in executing the exit strategy?
Sure, not a problem. Well, here in Washington, D.C., we have what's called TCP. That is short for the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness. Now, TCP is contracted under D.C. government, and they give out the money to various homeless service providers, shelter providers, and under TCP, we have the family shelter at the D.C. General Hospital. And the hospital is now defunct and is used as a shelter for families. And when we went there, they were able to find 2 people for us out of all of the young adults that we have there.
Well, you know, that's good that we found 2, because the family shelter over there is basically occupied by people ages 18 to 24 years old. And a lot of times they don't have, if they do have a resume, the resume is short on experience. So, you know, I'm happy to see that they at least knew their people well enough to give us a couple of people.
See, then we went to Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities oversees 3 men's shelters with a combined census of almost 900 men.
So these are the low barrier shelters?
Yes. Okay. And out of the Catholic Charities shelters, we got nobody.
Nobody at all?
Nobody at all, out of almost 900 men.
Well, that's probably because they are low barrier shelters. Yes. And when you stay in a low barrier shelter, they can't make you do nothing. You know, they can give you the opportunities, but they can't make you or force you to do anything. That's why they call it low barrier, correct?
Yes, it's called low barrier because you have no barriers to entry. They can't make you get into any type of program, and that actually, yes, it is the reason as to why they weren't able to get anybody for us. But I want to make the distinction that even though they can't force you to go into a program, they can still offer. And then we went to the Coalition for the Homeless. They have the Emory Workbench Shelter. That shelter holds 85 men, and you actually have to have a job or be in job training in order to get into that shelter. Of course, you can lose your job or exit the job training program after you get in there, and you don't necessarily lose your bed. But out of that shelter, we were only able to get 1 person.
Okay, out of what? That's 1 out of 85?
1 out of 85.
And some of the barriers, I guess, could be, you know, a lot of people get jobs in this whole thing. There's a lot of people doing research on jobs for everybody. But a lot of times these guys take these minimal labor jobs, you know, and then after 6 months, 8 months or so, they lose these jobs, you know. But and you needed to have a job to get into Emory Workbench Shelter. But once you lose that job, if you lose that job, then you're just there stagnant until you find another job.
Exactly.
So that's probably the problem there, because
yes.
I know all 85 men are not currently employed.
Right. And the final contractor that we went to was New Hope Ministries. New Hope Ministries runs the Open Door Women's Shelter and the John O. Young Women's Shelter.
Oh, that's the shelter that we're at right now?
Yes, exactly. And they have a combined census of more than 200 women. And we got nobody from there.
Yeah, because most of these women are older. They have health problems. As you can see where we're sitting, there's a few women out here now, and that's basically what they do all day, just sit on the wall. So if we want to get these women employed, there's a lot more services that's going to have to be incorporated rather than just, you know, job training and workforce training. There's a lot more. These women got a lot of psychological issues and a lot of physical issues. So I can understand why we didn't get more people from this population of women,
right? Because
we need some help for our wounded women.
Right. And then we went to the non-contract shelter providers. We have the Gospel Rescue Mission and the Central Union Mission. Now, those shelters don't actually receive city funding, and so we went there and we didn't get anybody. And then we went to the service providers. Now, there were several service providers, but I want to point out just one in particular that really stood out to me, and that was Thrive DC.
So Thrive is where you eat breakfast at every morning, isn't it?
No, it's Thrive.
It's where you eat breakfast,
yes.
Right?
Yes, it is. And at Thrive DC, that is a homeless day program. They feed breakfast. Well, they actually also have a program in the evening just for women. But in their morning program, they serve men and women. They serve breakfast. They have a computer lab. You can use the phone. They have a number of other services. But they also have an employment counselor. And at Thrive DC, they were really impressed because they do their people well, and they were able to follow our instructions to a T in this vetting process. They found one woman for us, but like I say, they followed our instructions very well, and she was exactly what we were looking for. And then finally, there was a CCNV shelter.
Oh, okay.
At CCNV, we actually followed two different tracks. On the one hand, we went through Jobs Have Priority. That is an agency which is located right inside of the CCNV shelter, and they help homeless people to find jobs. And JHP was able to offer us two people. And then we also worked through a man named Nathaniel Akers. And
that's the homeless guy that was living here? CCNV?
Yes. And Nathaniel Akers was able to find several other people for us, just by talking to the various homeless people inside the shelter.
That's great.
All right, now it's time for me to get on my soapbox. I mean, the mayor wants to cut $7 million from homeless services, and if he cuts that money from homeless services, you see all these homeless folk out here?
Eric, calm down, man. Come here. Sit down a minute. Calm down a little bit. You know, during this process, we contacted, I guess, about 4,000 people with the help of the service providers and service organizations. And we didn't get as many people as I thought we'd get. Out of 4,000 people, I would have thought that we'd get at least 400 people.
Yeah, that number is really deplorable. But you know, it's not really an indictment on the organizations. It's an indictment on the system. Here in DC, we have a system that is not geared toward getting homeless people employed and out of homelessness. We have this caretaker system, if you will.
What do you mean by caretaking? Like maintaining?
Yes, they maintain the homeless rather than ending homelessness. And all the budget money goes toward just getting homeless people into shelters and getting them food from day to day and so forth and so on. And all that stuff is good and fine and necessary, but we should go beyond that. There's no real workforce development within the shelter system. I mean, you have workforce development within TANF for the homeless families, and they try to get heads of households working, but for homeless singles, you have nothing. And so they just allow you to linger in the shelter. So even if that $7 million is put back in the budget for fiscal year 2013, all you're going to have is more of what you see here, people just sitting outside and not having anything to do.
But you know what, Eric? I am really excited about the people that we did find that will enter the exit strategy. I'm a little disappointed out of all the people that we had to choose from. We found so many, but the few that we did find, they're going to be an excellent match for the employers. They're going to be excellent workers, and they're going to work out just fine. You know, here in the district, maybe this is the time that we need to go back in time. Just go back in time, because everything that needs to be done in this city has actually been done. And all the statistics associated with it are right there. You know, they're in that document.
Yes, that is a job training homeless demonstration project.
Okay.
And you know, there were a lot of challenges with what we did, really just scouting around the city to find so few highly employable out of so many, yes. But you know, here at Streets, we're willing to rise to the challenge, and that's why we don't just come with the problem, but we also come with the solution.
But on that, let me just make it clear that this is not an indictment against the government, against city government. This is an indictment on the practice, the procedure, the way that things have always been done in this city. that needs to change.
Right. We do have to change the system and the mentality away from just maintaining homelessness to actually ending homelessness, getting people into jobs, making them productive citizens, making them self-sufficient. Like we always say here at STREATS, we're trying to move people toward self-sufficiency. But on that note, I want to invite DC government to really stay involved with us through this process, and if they won't do it, then it will go directly to the Department of Labor.
Well, we've been there before.
Yes, we've been there before, but you know, we're going to do this thing. So get in, get out, and get run over, basically. You know, but we are going to make this thing work, and so we want to partner with DC government in this effort. We want to partner with the various homeless service providers. We want to provide services that really get folks beyond homelessness, and also I want to thank those who have been involved in the process up until now. Like you said, we've spoken to DOL in the past, so I want to thank the U.S. Department of Labor. I want to thank the U.S. Department of Housing and Human Services. I want to thank Councilman Michael Brown and Councilman Jim Graham for all that they've done with us. I want to thank all the various homeless service providers that helped us to find people that we did find.
And everybody else, in case we forgot somebody, it's very important that we continue this process to make DC a better place to live. And before you leave, remember, Google
job training homeless demonstration project.
You got it? One more time.
Yeah. Job training homeless demonstration project
of 1992. Until the next time, you better believe, Steve. Hello, everybody. I just got back home and I forgot something very important. I need to acknowledge two people personally that I forgot to acknowledge. One is the director of the Department of Human Services, Mr. David Burns. David Burns, thank you very much for all your cooperation and participation. And last but not least, Ms. Lisa Mallory. She is the director of the Department of Employment Services. It was a pleasure meeting you, Ms. Mallory. I look forward to working with you again.
And on that note, I would say that we want to bring all these different parties back to the table so that we can talk about the intricacies and idiosyncrasies of this process of getting the homeless people employed, and also let's talk about some funding. And while I'm on it, I should also say that we at STREATS, you know, we don't run from a challenge, and so we're willing to rise to the occasion, and what we want is a sole source agreement so that we at STREATS can do what other homeless service providers don't do, and we can help to move homeless people to self-sufficiency.